Thank you, Jessica and team, for leading us in worship. And what a great prayer. Fill us with your heart and lead us in your love to those around us. I trust that will resonate through the course of the remainder of our time together this morning. My name is Bob, and thank you for the welcome from Dion earlier, and it's great to be back with you. Pastor Murray, as you heard, is away on a holiday, a well-deserved holiday. Hasn't he and Pat been doing a great job of interim pastors here at Emerge? So I've been in constant conversation with Pastor Murray and tracking along with Emerge and what's happening here. For those of you who may not know me and may be new to Emerge, I get to work with 109 churches like yours in Alberta and the Northwest Territories. That's how many churches are sister churches to your church in our district. And so I've been working with Emerge and the staff and the board, and I've been in Emerge actually more than any other church in our district in the last 4 years. So I count that a privilege. It's always nice to be back. It feels a bit like a second home. In fact, I'm here more often than our own home church because I get to travel. One time I was up just south of the Arctic on one Sunday. The next Sunday I was down in Claresholm, which is our southernmost church here in Alberta. So it's a great opportunity and a privilege to be a part of connecting and working. And when Pastor Murray asked me if I would just fill in for him today, he asked me to more than just preach, more than just fill this lectern, but to come as a pastor. And I can't think of a more important role today. This past week has been a heavy week for all of us on so many different levels. Friday, and in fact, what we've experienced this week is just a reminder of how broken our world is, how chaotic the world in which we live. Friday was the 24th anniversary of 9/11. We can go back, those of us who were remembering that day and all the ramifications of that. There were school shootings in America on campuses, high school and university, around the world, as well as I'm sure here in Sylvan Lake. We grieved with the wife and the 2 little kids of Charlie Kirk, and our hearts are broken because of that. We grieve with what is occurring around our world with an incursion of Russian drones in Poland, with deaths of children in Gaza, with civilians who have been killed in Ukraine. We see around us a world that's in upheaval, and we want to respond in a good way as Christians. And I think that prayer, Lord, show us who you are, fill us with your heart, and lead us in your love to those around us, is such an appropriate song for today. So appreciate Jessica leading that. And I think in response to all of that, there is a prayer that perhaps you've heard before and are familiar with, but could make it even more timely and significant for yourselves. The prayer that says, Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. Where there is hatred, let me bring hope. Where there is despair, let me bring love. Where there is darkness, let me bring light. And the verse that you see on the screen in front of you is the verse that I want to share out of today. It comes from the heart of Jesus, Matthew chapter 5. He is sharing in this chapter and chapter 6 and chapter 7 of Matthew what has come to be known as the Sermon on the Mount. It's some of the most succinct teaching that Jesus gave in the course of his 3 years. It's a summary of some of the core principles that he lived by. But he says in verse 14, that you, and speaking to his disciples, speaking to followers of Jesus this morning at Emerge Church, you are the light of the world. A town built on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on a stand, and it gives light to everyone in the house. Notice that phrase, it gives light to everyone in the house. Light is non-discriminatory. When there is light, there won't be darkness, but that light affects everyone. And God calls us, Jesus calls us, to be that light of the world. He goes on to say, in the same way, let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father who is in heaven. that if you have your Bible or if you have it in a paper version or on your phone, if you could turn to that right now. I know we've just read that. It's on the screen. I'll be sharing some other verses with you as well today, but there's something about just having your own Bible in your hand as we go through. And if you're inclined to take notes, I won't be having any fill in the blanks today, but I believe that God would speak to your heart today. It's no coincidence that you're here and that he wants you to hear something pretty special and pretty unique about your role and what you can do and the difference you can make. So often we think, can my life make a difference? Can me being led by God in his love to someone around me make a difference? I believe it can. And in answer, you saw the screen perhaps earlier, who is Canada's greatest hero? I might also say, who is Canada's greatest light? Across our nation today, and here in Sylvan Lake, there will be hundreds of communities that host what they call the Terry Fox Run. That, don't take my word for it, but in the minds of millions of Canadians, Terry Fox is our greatest hero. Did you know that when Terry Fox started his run in 1980, the Marathon of Hope, that the cancer that he had, there was a low probability of children with that kind of cancer having that cancer healed and to be made well. Today, 80% of children with that same kind of cancer get well. And I think in a large part that's because of Terry Fox. And the money, not only he raised while he was running his Marathon of Hope, but the close to $1 billion that have been raised by Canadians to support cancer research. That's what Terry was all about. Did you know that Terry was a follower of Jesus? That Terry made a decision to follow Jesus with his life, that he went to a Baptist church, that he read the entire Bible in 1 year, that when he developed cancer, it was the Bible he turned to that helped him find comfort in the midst of that diagnosis. And that when he ran his Marathon of Hope, he kept a journal. And in that journal, he wrote down Bible verses that he read before he started off his run that day. And that his life influenced those people around him. You may say, Pastor Bob, are you sure of those facts? Oh, I'm 100% sure. How many have ever heard of a person named Rika Noda? When Rika was a little girl, a friend invited her to come to church. Rika grew up as a Buddhist. And when she attended that church, she heard about Jesus. She learned about his love. And over the course of time, as a child, she became a follower of Jesus. And it wasn't just a Sunday kind of show up to church kind of faith. It really meant something to Rika. And she shared her faith in Jesus with anybody who would listen. And one time in high school, she met a young guy named Terry. And she invited Terry to her church. And she developed a friendship with Terry. And it was in that church that Terry heard about God and his love. It was an echo of what he'd already heard from Rika. And they not only were friends, but got a little closer than that friendship. I talked with Rika last week. She gave me a half hour of her time. We have something in common. We're both pastors. She is married now, has 3 children, and is a pastor in a church in Vancouver. And she took a whole half hour with me just to talk about her life, her ministry, and about Terry, and about what I've just shared with you. He shared with me how Terry was so curious about life, that he wanted to know how things worked, and that carried over into God and faith. He wanted to know how things worked with God and with Jesus, and would Jesus really answer his prayers, and was the Bible true? And Terry, all through the course of his Marathon of Hope, and then when the cancer came back again, Terry was leaning into his faith, because if you follow Terry's life, you may recall that one of the last press conferences he gave, he talked about the assurance of heaven, that if he died, that he would go to heaven. I think that's quite profound. I think that a little girl being invited to a church, growing up in a Buddhist family, learning about Jesus, making a decision, having it so solid that she shared her faith with other people, that she knew the heart of God, and she was led by his love to those around her, and one of those people was Terry Fox, an individual who had no idea how he would shape a nation and be perceived as a hero by so many 40 years later. And people out there today, right here in Sylvan Lake, running their 1K, 2K, 5K, 10K run to raise money for cancer. that is influence. I think to me that's like the light. A lot of people may not attribute it to Jesus, but Terry would have attributed what he found strength in to Jesus. And my question when I think about Terry and about Rika is, who in Sylvan Lake needs to hear from you? Who in Bentley or wherever you may live in Rimbey or the surrounding area, the place you work, the place you go to school, who needs to hear about the love of Jesus that's been placed in your heart because you know God's heart with the people around you? And who is waiting today for that? I want to talk today about the goodness that comes from light and the goodness that comes from a local church. And if you're new to Emerge Church and you're sourcing out a church, I would encourage you, come on back next Sunday, be a part of that newcomers luncheon, be able to get connected to people. Today, it might sound like I'm trying to be a marketer or a seller for the church, but I'm really just sharing facts and truth. There's something called the halo effect. It originates out of this verse about letting your light shine, of doing good deeds so that your Father in heaven would be glorified, that God would be honored because of the choices and the love that followers of Jesus make for him. And that this blessing is what's called the halo effect. The effect of a local church in Canada. Did you know that there is something of this nature that has not only been studied by people who are part of churches, but also sociologists? This is actually a term that's originating out of Canadian sociology. It's called the halo effect. It's the effect that a local church has in their community. And they've been actually able to tangibly track it in empirical measurements to say that a local church, for every dollar that's given to a local church, so every dollar that's given to Emerge Church, there is $3.39 of benefit that goes back into the community. You say, talk to me about that. What do you mean, $3.39 that goes back into the community? Well, that's the effect not only of Emerge Church, but churches of people who follow Jesus across Canada that have an effect on their community through volunteer service, through reduced crime, through support for vulnerable people in a community, through community events, and even just the positive impact of community and neighborhood stability. That where there are churches, all those things are tied back to the influence of a local church. To a degree, even a church that might not intentionally endeavor to do a number of different things that would reach out to a community. And when you understand that and you think about churches that do intentionally reach out to a community, imagine the effect. In other words, when a church is alive and vibrant and reaching out, the effects are to allow the light and in a community for it to thrive and for it to be able to grow. Like I said at the beginning, I get to interact with Emerge plus 109 other churches, and I get to coach pastors, and I get to see actually what they do in their communities, and just excited about some of the things that are happening in Alberta. I could take you to Stony Plain to a church called Kingdom Advance. It's pastored by Jennifer Mitchell. I get to coach her. She's from Uganda. And their church has become known in their community for their clothing exchange. Well, not an exchange, but people can come in and get clothing if they need it. There are meals provided to the community. There's food provided to the community. They support their community with mental health initiatives. And it's so significant what they do that the mayor, the MLA, and the MP have all joined together with that church in partnership, attended events, come to services to be there to say thank you. They actually received an award from their community for making a difference in their community. I think that's awesome. Kingdom Advance with Jennifer. There's Father's House in Edmonton. I'm not sure if you've heard of that. It's pastored by Debbie Kunst. This morning, as she does every Sunday, she fed 500 people at breakfast. 500 people at breakfast. A simple breakfast, it's cereal. And very often people will take 2 bowls of cereal. But this is what she does every Sunday morning before they have church. They feed people. And There's a huge need in Edmonton. We hear about the homeless, we hear about people on the street, but very often we don't hear about Debbie Coons and what she does. But that happened this morning. It happens every Sunday, and every week, 3 days of the week, they provide a hot lunch to over 150 people who live on the street that come into their building. I've volunteered at that lunch. They're incredibly well organized, well disciplined with cleaning. Everybody has to wash their hands when they come in. There's places they sit down. The food is actually served to them at their tables. And then at the end of a time, they head out the door, and then everything gets scrubbed down. All the chairs, all the tables, the floors get washed every time, each of those 3 days a week. And on Tuesdays, there's a church in Edmonton called Life Church, which is my home church, that makes sandwiches. And they deliver those sandwiches on the street every Tuesday night. They've been doing that for 10 years. I'm not sure if you've read that good news story in the Edmonton Journal or the Calgary Herald or the local paper in Sylvan Lake. Probably not, right? But that's happening every week, and that's one of your sister churches. That's what they do. My friend Connie Jacob planted a church in Ogden in Calgary. You might know Connie because she spoke at a women's retreat just a couple of years ago. She's the hip-hop artist, and she planted a church at Easter about 18 months ago. And her whole goal was simply this: I want to listen to my community. I want to spend 6 days of the week in my community, meeting people, talking to them, finding out their needs, and then I want to rally other people to help meet those needs. She's done that for 18 months. Last Sunday, her community got together to hold a fundraiser for the church. The people in the community who don't go to the church raise money for the church in their community. Isn't that amazing? Like, I don't know, I like to applaud and stuff like that when I hear things, because we hear so much negative, right, in our culture, that churches are so selfish and they're just themselves. But you got a person like Connie Jacob, and people in the community raise money. The tattoo parlor, people that, again, haven't gone to her church because they saw what she did for the community. They helped repair a home for a man with multiple sclerosis. He lived in this home. He's been in the community. People walked by his house. But Connie met him and said, "What can we do to help?" And he said, "You know what? This needs fixing." So she rallied a whole bunch of people in the community. All the equipment was donated, all the painting, all the work. And people from the community came and fixed his house. And the Calgary Herald reported that. It was on their front page. And again, a really good news story. I could go on and on. Let me finish with this one. Bethel Barrhead. This is not about women pastors, even though each one of the ones I've spoken of so far is a female. But this is about a church that hosts a monthly hot dogs for high schoolers. They do it at the church. And they also support their community skate park. What I thought is so awesome is the people who do this, the youngest one is 64 years old. It's all the seniors in the church that cook the hot dogs, serve the pop and the chips to high schoolers, because the high school is just a couple of blocks. I was the interim pastor in that church. And they have a skate park in their community, and all the grandmas make cookies, chocolate chip cookies, oatmeal cookies, cinnamon cookies, and they take it to the kids. And then they had an event in their church on a Sunday for skateboarders. And it was all the grandmas and the grandpas that helped organize that and sponsor it. I love that. Generations, you got your grandparents, you got your grandkids, and they all come together around the love of Jesus Christ. And I could go on because I got so many stories, but Sylvan Lake is one of those stories. Emerge Church right here, you're one of those stories. And the opportunity to be the light in this community, because the community needs light. This community needs light. Sylvan Lake is just like every other community. Jesus said, "You are the light of the world." That light doesn't exist for itself. It exists to shine in dark places. Jesus said, "I'm the light of the world," but then he said to his followers, "Now you are the light of the world." And his light is tied to the cross. This is not a feel-good kind of sentimental kind of love. It's tied to a cross that this reminds us of. The fact that that cross talks about light. That it was on that kind of cross, that's kind of well-honed compared to the cross that Jesus died on. But it's a reminder that it took Christ's life, Jesus' life, who died in our place, and then was raised again from the dead to offer us something way more than religion. He gave us the opportunity to experience God's love and his grace. That he kind of answered that prayer himself. Fill me with your heart and lead me in your love to those around me. Jesus came to simply show the heart of God. If you want to know what God is like, learn about Jesus. Follow his words, read the Gospels, track who he was, what he did, what he said, and then you can follow him and emulate him, and even more importantly, have a relationship with him by asking him into your life. When I come to the end of this message, I'll give you an invitation to do just that. But he calls us to be the light. Our neighbors need the light. When the church reaches out through day camps, kids camps, through youth events, or simply just opening your doors to the community, it pushes back the darkness. The darkness has to flee when there's light. That Jesus says nobody lights a lamp and puts it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on a stand so the whole house can receive the light. And our light is exactly the same way. And that people may not always say, what you did is because of Jesus. But what they will feel is that love of Jesus. When their lives are seen, when help is offered, when prayers are given, when people actually communicate a sincere kind of love, people feel that. And that's the halo. That's the halo effect that goes way beyond these walls, limited to just a Sunday morning, and it goes 24/7, each day of the week. I know you're looking for a new pastor. That's a prayerful endeavor. But you know, God has somebody out there for you. And when I was preparing this message, I was thinking, I imagine that a person saying, should I come to this church or not, Lord? How are you directing me? He might ask you this question. If Emerge were to shut its doors, would anybody in your community care? He would be wanting to know what you think about the answer to that question. And that would be a good thing to think through before that person comes and candidates with you. That if Emerge were to shut down and disappear, would anybody notice? I believe that's what God's calling every church to. Every church that declares Jesus Christ as Lord, because he's the Lord of the church. And that we would be the light in our communities and affecting in such a significant way that other people would notice that. The community needs God's light. That you are the light of Sylvan Lake. Excuse me. You're the light of the world. And second of all, when we're the light, our neighbors can experience God's goodness. This is what was in the heart of an Old Testament prophet. His name was Jeremiah. And he was writing to the nation of Israel when they were in captivity in another nation. What do you do when you're in captivity? He wrote them from God's heart to say to them this: seek the peace and prosperity of the city. Pray to the Lord for it, because if it prospers, you too will prosper. And I think that's the heart of the Gospels. I think that's the heart of God's heart for us as a church. I think it's God's heart for every church to pray for the prosperity of Sylvan Lake, for Edson, for Claresholm, for Fort Good Hope in the Northwest Territories, for Yellowknife, for Rimbey. Because as those communities prosper, so would you prosper. That's about that halo effect. That's about being a part of that light. This is what Jeremiah was trying to get across. Jocelyn and I had the privilege of being in Ukraine this summer for 7 weeks. It's been a different summer for us. And I've been to Ukraine twice. I've shared some of my stories here, but it was the first time for Jocelyn. And we spent 7 weeks. Jocelyn was actually the first Canadian woman to travel as far east towards Russia as she did. So we were close to the front lines, delivering food. We were in communities we passed pretty heavily armed Ukrainian soldiers. And people ask us today, like, what was it like to be there? It's awful hard to describe it in one word, but we would say this. We were in a church service pretty much every day of those 7 weeks in different communities. And training pastors, meeting with Christians, talking with kids workers. We had the opportunity actually to participate with day camps that were provided for children largely by the money of Canadians. Christians who donated money to be able to send kids to a camp, just like you had your camp here this past summer. And there were over 2,000 children that were given a break from a war to be able to experience life as a kid does, even in Canada, with games and food and drinks and candy and fun and singing and prizes, and also being able to sit down and listen to people who love them, get hugs and hear about Jesus, and be able to see that there is hope, that God cares about them, that God sees them. And people just like you here in Canada gave the opportunity for 2,000 kids. And that work that they do there is summed up for me in this, that they just do what they can do. So churches, when we gathered with them, when there was worship, the worship was vibrant. People were singing, they were clapping. You would think in a war-torn country there might be more somber worship, but they were joining together. They had a band on the platform. Sometimes it was just a guy with an acoustic guitar. Other times there were singers with a lead guitar and drums. But the look on the faces of those on the platform were with smiles, with eyes closed, hands lifted, worship to God, celebrating who Jesus was. There was no complaining, there was no bitterness, there was no hatred towards an enemy that is pillaging their country, but they were looking to God to glorify him and draw other people to Jesus. Do you know the center of revival in Europe is in Ukraine right now? That there are more people coming to Christ in Ukraine than anywhere else in all of Europe. And there are more churches being planted across Europe because of people who live in Ukraine, because of kids like these. You see the smiles on their faces? Those were replicated in the eyes and the smiles of boys and girls throughout the country where we traveled. But they received the crafts that they made, the experience they had. For some, it was one day. For some, it was held in a bomb shelter. For some, it was more than a day. But for each and every one, they were reminded that life can be good, that it's not about everybody who hates you, but that there are other people who love you, even strangers that would come to your village and take time with you to give you an incredible day, give you ice cream and other things that you haven't had for a while. And I think that's kind of like the light. I think neighbors hearing about the good things, about Jesus and about the gospel. And again, as you pray for Ukraine and pray for others, just that whole understanding of how that really affects others is the light. You know, there's people talk today about the difference between human and humane. And the little letter E at the end of the word human, when it's added on, turns to humane. How do we become humane? There's a lot of E words. Empathy, we can feel with other people when they suffer. Engagement, to actually go and do something with them. Encouragement, just the whole idea of speaking life instead of cursing death. But I really do think sincerely that the best E is the word Emmanuel. That God with us, that God became like us, that open up my eyes in wonder. That's what Jess sang today. Open up my eyes in wonder. And I'm not sure if it still catches you if you've been a Christian for a while, but think about the wonder of a God who is totally infinite, who becomes like us. He comes into our world and takes on a human form. He cries, he gets sleepy, he's tired, he is weary, he's hungry, he's exactly like us. And for over 3 years, he lives this kind of life out. That the God who is everywhere, even today, has chosen to become present right here with you in Sylvan Lake at Emerge Church. That's the wonder of a God who cares so much about us, and the ability to feel that in our lives and in our hearts and to understand that. That's what Emmanuel is all about. And when we begin to follow Jesus and then we say, Lord, fill me with your heart and lead me in your love to those around me, that becomes like Emmanuel, that Christ with us, in us, through us, into our communities, that God works in our broken humanity, that he works in the lives of people that he leads us into. My prayer every day, I've shared this before, is, Lord, today, is there someone you want me to connect with? And I believe that for Emerge, even this morning. If you're new to Emerge, if you're a guest here today, perhaps, you just might be that one individual that I trust would hear from God's word and would hear in this moment of your life and whatever you're facing, and you would know that God sees you. He hears you, he cares about you, he knows you, and he wants you to be able to know him. And that's the beauty of Emmanuel. That's what changes everything in our world. That's what turns human into humane. Last of all, the third thing is that when we're the light, God gets the glory. You notice that it says that do your good deeds before men, do your good works, your good events, your good ministry, not so that you get the glory, but that your Father in heaven would be glorified. That's the beauty, right? That's why we do this. That's why we gather together. It's about Jesus. It's about him. Our music, our words, even our announcements, Dion, everything is about Jesus. That's why we're together in this environment. And it's about other people seeing who God is and then him getting the glory. You know, Canadians are often skeptical about religion, but I know this. They deeply respect tangible acts of Christian love. When they feel it, when they see it, there's a huge respect. When people see churches investing in the common good, their perception of Christianity improves. That every gift of food, every item of clothing shared, every warm welcome at a community event, every day camp, every youth encounter. Do you know that one of the greatest things that mitigates against drug addiction in Canadian communities is a church and a youth group? That where there is an active group within a community of teenagers, statistically shown across Canada, it affects to reduce not only drug addiction, but also crime in that age group. And so the ability for a church to do youth ministry is not just so you can have a nice gathering, which is always good to be creative and bring kids together and give them pizza or hot dogs or whatever that might be, but to understand the fact that God would work through that to influence an entire community in an effect that sociologists might call halo, but what Jesus called the light. That people would see those good works and glorify God in heaven and have an opportunity to be inclined to think about God and who he's all about. You know, friends, I said before that I would give an invitation. I don't know all of you. I'm not sure where your background is or where you come from. I've talked about the halo effect and the ripple effect. But the idea that personally with you, if you're here today, you've heard what I've shared, you've listened to the verse, you've heard the heart of Jesus, but you're searching. You're like Terry Fox, who was curious about life, curious about faith, curious about God. And it took somebody else like Rika to introduce him to the Bible, to the scriptures, and to Jesus. And in that curiosity, learned about Jesus and made a decision to follow him. That might be you today. And if that is you, that God wants you to know that he sees you, that he sent his son Jesus to die for you, that he created every person to have a relationship with him. But that relationship got broken because of something that is understood in his characterization to be sin. That each person, myself, everyone in our entire world is separated from God in a relationship because of sin. But Jesus came to change that. Jesus came to create an opportunity for light to shine in darkness and for lives to be changed. And that experience with who God is can be your experience today through a simple choice that says, God, I'm not quite sure still about faith and about you, but what I heard and what I understand about Jesus gives me enough information to say, I want more of this. And Jesus, I want you in my life. I want you, just like I heard about Terry Fox, like about others, that I don't want to just know through other people's experience. I want to know you. I want you to come into my life. I want you to be my Savior, to change me from the inside out, not just about changing the exterior, but deep down, Jesus, I want you in my life. And I thought I would just pause, and before we close off and the worship team comes back, to just give you an invitation to do that right now, right here. You could do that simply by where you're sitting. Say, Jesus, what I just heard Pastor Bob say, that's what I want for my life. I want to be a person who would say, I've seen God's heart. I know what God's heart's like. I know that he loves me and he loves this world, and I know he sent Jesus into this world to die for me in my place. And I want to believe that when I pray that Jesus would come in my life. And so I'm going to ask you to bow your heads with me, please, just to create a private moment. And I would ask you today just for two things and two purposes. One for your indication that this is your day, the 14th of September, 2025, to say, Jesus, that I want to know you in my life, to be able to follow after you. You gave your life for me. I understand that you're calling me to give my life to you, and that's what I want to do. And if that's in your heart, God already knows that because he understands. But may I also encourage you just to take one more further action, and that would be to just lift your hand up to let me see, and I'd invite you to take it down. I ask you to do that simply to add a physical choice, to do something beyond just what's in your heart. But Jesus said that whoever declares me before men, I'll declare them before my Father in heaven. There's something about a public acknowledgement that what's happening privately in your heart that begins to change things even deeper. So as I look out across the congregation today, would you just simply lift your hand? And when I see it, I'll ask you to take it down. But doing that is simply not for my sake. It really is for you. Because what it does is it takes something you're doing privately and makes it public, acknowledges it, shares it with somebody else. And so I'm going to look to my, yes, I see your hand. Yes, you can take that down. And I'm looking to my left, your right, and then just going across the house today. If you would raise your hand and let me know that's your choice. Once I see it, you can take it down. Yes, thank you. Someone else? As I just go from left to right, your right to left. I'm in the center. And just moving over to my right and your left now. Someone who would say yes to Jesus this morning. I don't want to miss anybody. Our Father in heaven, I thank you so much for sending Jesus. Thank you, Jesus, for your words to us, which are life. Thank you, the song that we sang today is an answered prayer. Show me who you are and fill me with your heart. Lord, I believe that people in this gathering today have felt your heart, that we would know your heart even better, and that you now want to lead us in your love to those around us. So, Lord, for those who raised their hand today to say yes to you, I pray that they would feel in their spirit that they've done something good, that you have seen them, heard their prayer, and that as they've taken one step to you, you've run towards them. So I pray that they would feel your favor, your love, and the beginning of a journey of walking with you. So bless them. Bless this congregation. Bless their light and the halo effect of their lives and of corporately their congregation. Bless them as they seek out a pastor. Bless Pastor Murray and Pat as they continue to offer leadership and support and pastoral work in this congregation. And all of it to your glory, Jesus. That's what we would pray in your name. Amen. For those of you who raise your hands, at the end of the aisles, there's a series of cards. There's an offering envelope, but there's also this welcome card. And at the bottom of the back of the card, there's a place that says, I made a decision to follow Christ today. Would you just check that area off? Put your name down on that? Would you pass that in at the end of the service? I'll be down at the front, be in the lobby. Pastor Jessica will be here as well. But would you pass that in to someone to celebrate with you and help you in taking next steps? And then, can I leave with just these 3 thoughts of a challenge to each and every one of us? Where is Emerge already shining light in this community? Where could the halo grow even wider? And who in Sylvan Lake is still waiting for the touch of Christ's love through us, through you? I'm going to invite the prayer team if they would come and just be at the front for those who would have a need, would look for someone to pray into their lives with them, someone who just would love on them. So prayer team, if you would come, could I invite everyone to stand? Jessica's going to lead us in that chorus one more time, and then she'll be able to dismiss the service. But prayer team, if you would come, let's all just gather together and join together in this last song of a prayer, really, from our hearts to God.
Holy, there is no one like you. There is none beside you. Open up my eyes in wonder and show me who you are, and fill me with your heart and lead me in your love to those around me. Worthy of every song we could ever sing, worthy of all the praise we could ever bring, worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you, oh, we live for you. Jesus, the name above every other name. Jesus, the only one who could ever save. Worthy of every breath we could ever breathe. We live for you, oh, we live for you. Holy, there is no one like you. There is none beside you. Open up my eyes and wonder. Show me who you are, and fill me with your heart and lead me in your love to those around me. I will build my life upon, and I will build my life upon your love. It is a firm foundation. I will put my trust in you alone, and I will not be shaken, and I will build my life upon your love. It is a firm foundation, and I will put my trust in you alone, and I will not be shaken. Holy, there is no one like you. There is none beside you. Open up my eyes and wonder. Show me who you are, and fill me with your heart and lead me in your love to those around me. Holy, there is no one like you. There is none beside you. Open up my eyes and wonder. Show me who you are, and fill me with your heart and lead me in your love to those around me. You can keep praying in here if you need to. Thanks for coming today. Enjoy your week, and let's be the light. Emerge.